Hello. So the last devlog, I'd started doing some character actions, specifically like digging holes with a shovel, something really simple. And the next thing to look at was something a little bit more complicated, like fishing. There's a fair amount of work involved in this, and I want the fishing system to be kind of overloaded, so you can use it to sort of hoik things out of holes or, corners of the world, little secrets, as well as just, having a fairly robust sort of fishing minigame. So this is going to be like a quick high level look at what was involved in getting the basics working. The first thing was actually just modelling and texturing a prop for the character to hold, so a basic fishing rod. Eventually I want to have a few of these, but for now we just need one. And then we need to make some decisions about how this is actually going to act in the world. For simplicity, I'm going to ignore the fishing line, and I'm going to make the lure a individual object with its own sort of code. It needs to do some specific things, bob around, detect kind of what it impacts, and then I might even have the code for detecting the fish in the lure itself. So once the rod is built, it needs to be attached to the player. That's really simple in UE4. It has sockets that you can attach to bones, and you can just parent a static mesh to it, so there's no problem with that. But the player character will need a set of animations, and it needs to know that it's carrying the fishing rod. So basic movement needs to be covered. We need to have an idle pose when the player's not actually doing anything before the lure's been cast. We need to have like a kind of backwards motion, as if we're going to cast the rod, the cast itself, and then going from that casting position back to an idle where the player character's just holding the rod in front of itself. So these animations need to be knocked up in Modo, added to the player, and a bunch of code changes made so that the player recognises these. The player also needs to be able to select the rod, so the quick select UI ring that I'd shown before, that needs to be updated, and the player character needs to spawn, despawn in the fishing rod as appropriate. There's a little state machine already inside the player, so it knows if it's encumbered and what with, so extending that's pretty easy. This also tells the animation graph what animations to blend, and for the most part the magic just happens. Once the animations are in place and they're hooked up, the blend times and that are set, then you can kind of move around just using all the stuff that already exists in the build. Things get a little bit more complicated with the button responses though. There was no real system in the code to handle action buttons having different responses based on what the player was carrying, so all of that needed to be added. Once that was in place, then I needed to add some extra elements to the UI. I wanted to have a really simple power gauge, something that bounces up and down, a bit like a golf swingometer that you'd recognise from other games. There's no precision on the left and right movement when casting, I just want to have the power. And the UI element for this is mostly done in a material. I really like this procedural stuff because it ends up being pin sharp at any resolution. The sprint UI element is basically done the same way. The blueprint code just bounces a number in the material, and that can be passed back to the code when a button press is detected. Internally, the code to cast the lure doesn't use this power value exactly, it quantizes it down into one of 5 bands. Once you get a feel for the power gauge, then I think this should be a little bit more predictable, because the aim is for this rod to be a useful tool all over the world, not just specifically for fishing. The lure is a custom prop with its own logic. It's ostensibly a projectile as far as UE4 is concerned, but instead of exploding and passing on damage on impact, it detects the material of the object it's hit, either disappears or switches to a state where it can bob about and wait to detect a fish. Well, it will. I've not done that bit yet. Once all that's in place, we need some visual effects, water plops, impact effects when hitting the ground, a way to cover up removing the lure, all the things that kind of just makes it look a bit prettier. So we've already done quite a lot of work to get this far, and it's still not finished. At the point where I need to start adding the ability to pull things out of the water, or holes, or chests, or whatever else, and that opens up some other questions. How does the player select which bait to put on the rod? More UI. How is the player involved in pulling a fish out of the water? It shouldn't be as simple as just pressing a button, so that means it needs to be integrated with the stamina system somehow. It shouldn't be possible to hook big things out until you've built the stamina up. Does the rod or the line break? Should the lures be limited in number? So yeah, there's a bunch of work to really flesh this out fully, but it's getting there, and I've not even touched on the audio side of things yet. So there's been a lot of code to get this far, including refactoring a load of stuff out of the player character class and into the player controller, but I'm in a good place. It should all be extendable, and I think I can kind of go away and do some other things now. I really need to do some more modular pieces so I can build more of the outer world. As you can tell from the videos, I'm missing quite a lot of stuff. There's holes in the world, and I've still not got things like houses yet. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll post another update soon, and hopefully we'll have some more character actions to show.